Hello class, my name is Zilvinas Jauga and I'm doing a presentation for macroeconomics class. I choose to talk about macroeconomics indicator called inflation. So let's start, shall we? So first of all, I want to make sure that everyone understands what inflation is. According to our lovely textbook, inflation is an increase in the overall level of prices in the economy, which is written in page 13. But if we go beyond that, we can see that inflation can mean either an increase in the money supply or an increase in price levels. What I mean is that if the money supplies had been increased, that will eventually end up in higher price levels. If I want to explain that, just to imagine if you're buying something that you like, and if you have more money to buy it, the price of that cereal or whatever will rise, as producers will see that they can get more money out of it. Also, we need to know that if you consider inflation as measured, it is more measured by a consumer price index. And let's see what it is in Lithuania, for instance. So here I'm in the World Bank website, and in order to see the inflation of Lithuania measured by the consumer price index. It reflects annual percentage change in the cost of average consumer acquiring a basket of goods and services. So if we look at the chart of Lithuania, we can see that in 2008, in Lithuania there was the highest point. Comparing with all these years, 2008 had the highest consumer price index point, which is 10.9%. But every year you can see the consumer price index or inflation is changing. So it's constantly changing, and by these records we can see that during the last 3 years it's going down. And we might have some assumptions out of it. So it is important, and it is one of the macroeconomics. What is important for macroeconomics is that we can make assumptions out of these indicators. So when we saw this chart, we saw that in 2008 it was the highest point of inflation. And if you do some research, you can find that during 2008, there was a global financial crisis which plunged the economy into a deep recession, Lithuania's economy into a deep recession. So that's why in 2008 there was the highest point of inflation in Lithuania. Here I only found the Lithuanian text that explains why inflation level decreased in Lithuania. So basically it explains that through the years from 2010, 12, 13, the highest influence had an alcohol and tobacco industry, which had 2.9%. Food and non-alcoholic beverage industry had only 1.7, and clothing, shoes industry had 1% price increased, but it was not as high as 2008, so that's why it decreased. So let's go to the World Bank again, and now let's compare it, Lithuania with other country. For instance, let's take Russia. Oh, so now we can see that in Russia there is a different situation. The inflation rate was high even before the crisis in Russia, so you see it by 12.7%, It is higher by almost 10% than in Lithuania in 2005. And in 2008, as we discussed already, it was highest point in Lithuania, but in Russia it's even higher, and it stayed higher through the years, but it kind of decreases slowly. But from the latest news, I heard that in Russia, inflation tend to increase again. As you can see, the indicator goes up once again. So even if you write an inflation right now in Russia, you can see that here is pretty recent source. It was took like a couple days ago, and it says that Russia is in the face of recession and raging inflation. So you can imagine what reactions there is in Russia right now. So people are complaining prices on meat and fish and vegetable rose by 20% last year. Just enormously high prices compared with other years. Like people saying that we've survived so much before, we know all we will turn out fine. So we already saw that in Russia they all have like huge inflation, so they are kind of saying that they had experience. So that indicator basically tells us that what's happening in Russia, even though we don't know exact situation, we can already make some assumptions. For instance, price of sugar rose for 40% last year. It's ridiculously high. So we can make some assumptions just by looking at the indicator and be right, because that indicator and this article are close, but this article just completes the indicator and tells that what exactly happens in the country. To conclude my speech, I would like to also add the importance what we learned today. So importance of in a macroeconomics indicator is that it shows how economic is doing in the country. But if we need to know more detailed information, we can do some research and figure out, but it basically throws some ground idea of what is happening. Second point is that it helps to determine macroeconomic forecast, like macroeconomic indicators such as inflation, gross domestic product, unemployment level, current account balance, etc. All those can help you to determine macroeconomic forecast. Also, it could help to identify the major problems, what is happening in the country. For instance, if in Lithuania there is, as you can see, more exports, there is possibility that there is a possibility that we would have a better or lower inflation, as there is more choices of products for consumers, and the product prices will go down logically. And if there is less imports, it was happened like less in 8s and 9s, it also can mean that inflation is higher because there is less products imported in the country. And opposite with exports, if there is more exported out of the country, the price could be higher because there is less products. But it is not clear to say that. It's not very clear statement, but it kind of throws the idea that indicator could help you to identify or to try to catch those kind of problems where there could happen even though you don't kind of see them in the first place. So this is my presentation. There's my resources I took, and thank you for your attention.